Movies about musicians and their careers can always be hit and miss, especially when it is starring the musician themselves. But I was a lot more hopeful for the directorial debut of Aiden Zamiri, starring none other than Charli XCX, mockumentary about the whole BRAT craze and BRAT summer, The Moment. It's a film that has some wild swings and I think mostly pays it off. So without further ado, let's talk about The Moment. So this film is a pretty wild mockumentary about Charli XCX, starring Charli XCX, about the BRAT movement, what it meant, what it represented, and how an artist who goes insanely big off a wild moment like BRAT Summer, how there are so many vultures in the music industry, Hollywood in general, that are looking to capitalize off that and completely and utterly suffocate the artist where she has absolutely no creative control and is left overwhelmed. I think this film is very interesting and provides a lot of fascinating insight into that. Yes, this is a mockumentary, it's not based off complete reality, but I think what Charli XCX is ultimately going for here with this creative vision feels very earnest and I think means a lot to her personally. I think the film is very interesting in how she views BRAT Summer, what that represented in her life, and how the industry just wants to keep that going so they can ultimately get as much money out of this thing as possible. The film is very crazed. There's so much going on every frame, every moment here. As you can see, this artist just being completely suffocated by all of these people that have ideas, want to have their own say and input. And that is further exacerbated by the introduction of a character that is trying to make a concert film based off The Moment. This character is played by Alexander Skarsgård, this director that wants to have input, and I think he is comedically just so great in this film as this completely out of touch character that does not understand what BRAT is at all and what it means to a particular group of people, particular demographics that Charli XCX has really connected with over the course of this album and some of her previous work. There's some funny and great moments that I think fans of Charli will really appreciate in this film. Works of hers that she's not quite as fond of anymore and how she has grown as a person. There's a great sort of awkward scene between a bus driver, her personal driver, and her as they watch the Boom Clap music video. There's great moments in there that I think are just comedically excellent and well done. There are a number of appearances and cameos from a lot of people that have been closely linked to Charli XCX. And I think that adds to the whole fun of the situation. But I think the $1 million question here is, can Charli XCX actually deliver a great performance? We've seen these types of efforts from musicians before. Most notably The Weeknd with 2 outings with The Idol and then Hurry Up Tomorrow, which I think both really didn't work. I think in terms of a comparison, this film is a little bit closer to Hurry Up Tomorrow than The Idol. But I think that The Moment is a far superior film, and I think Charli XCX is given a screenplay and direction that utilizes any acting talent that she has to the best of their abilities. Aiden Zamiri is the director of this film. It's his first outing as a director, and I think what he does here and the way that he directs Charli, I think is as good as you could possibly do. I've heard a lot of criticisms about this film, about how Charli XCX's character is very one-dimensional. And yeah, she definitely is. She's sort of humming and hawing through everything. She's letting so many things dictate her life, and that continues to happen. And the moment that you really see anything showy from her or any sort of interesting acting chops from her is at the very end of this film, where I think she delivers a pretty solid monologue. But I think the one-dimensionality is very intentional because Charli XCX is still new to acting and delivering a performance. So I think giving her a somewhat simple role here is exactly what is needed to make this film look good. You look at someone like The Weeknd with Hurry Up Tomorrow or The Idol, he's playing somewhat complex characters and on paper interesting characters, but they are far too ambitious for someone at his level to deliver as a performer. And I think Charli XCX is restrained a little bit because of that. She's not as three-dimensional because I think the performance would come across very jarring because she probably doesn't fully understand how to capture all of that yet, because she is still a novice as an actor, as great of a musician as she is. I think some of the bigger problems in this film stem from the writing of the movie. I think it's paced very strange, and I think certain character motivations and how they evolve just aren't communicated the best and seem very flat in their execution, such as a wild change of creative ideas from Charli that stem from a meeting with Kylie Jenner. It seems very brief and it doesn't really feel all that significant, but it's enough to completely change this character's ideas about her creative process on a dime and sell out. And I think that moments like that just didn't quite convince me as to why she's made such a dramatic character shift. And then things seem kind of disingenuous as this character becomes very conflicted near the back end of this movie because of very personal things that are happening to her and her reputation potentially being ruined through everything that is happening. It makes the character feel very disingenuous, and you could almost say unlikable for a lot of this. I do appreciate though that there is some authenticity here, and Charli XCX is brave enough to illustrate a version of herself, even if it's a character that isn't the most likable, that is a little bit complex in a way. And I really appreciate that. And I do think Charli XCX does deliver for the most part. I think that the ultimate message that she wants to portray through this film is definitely achieved in quite a fun package and a mostly entertaining movie that I liked and had a lot of charm to it, whether that be through the comedy, through the use of Charli's music, which has always been amazing. I'm a huge fan of the BRAT album and what that delivered. I listen to that music on repeat all the time. I think she's a phenomenal artist, and I think when it plays to those strengths, the film is booming and it is incredible. I think this also has a great use of sound and some solid editing to really capture the feel of a mockumentary. It's all just a very interesting package, and I think is a much better option for a musician to go for rather than just doing a basic concert film. This is actually an indictment of that in the best possible way, and I think that just adds to the fun, and I think The Moment is a solid film that I recommend to you and that you should check out. And as a score, I'm going to give The Moment a 3.5 out of 5 because this film was a fun time, despite how flawed it could be at times. And those are my thoughts towards The Moment. If you've seen the movie, let me know what you think about it in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.